my shrimp. Much for joining for tasting time.
Hi, I'm Katie O'Reilly and welcome to Katie O's Food Carnival. This is my episode on Quality Bites. And it's so fun for all of us because we all love to eat. And what I do, I've often expressed in my day job, is I own a high-end catering company in which I custom design for my clients and I let them determine their tastes and to design the food according to those tastes for their guests, for their event. However, so many of us, because we eat, we love to eat, we sometimes cook, we play with cooking, many of us think that we're qualified to be a judge, to critique food. We're like, oh, hey, I could do that. But honestly, there's a foundation, and there's an experience level that comes with being qualified to actually be a judge of food. There's so many food shows out there that we all love to watch, and we're like, there's a panel of judges, and sometimes you'll see a contestant or something, and they're like, I don't agree with that judge. And you're like, well, you know, maybe the judge is right because, well, why is the judge right, actually? My guest today is Bill Reynolds. He is fully qualified to be a judge, and you are going to hear why. After 12 years in the Washburn Institute of Chicago, followed by 25 years at the Culinary Institute of America, leading chefs and walking with them in the process of designing the foundation for their food for it to taste correct. There is actually a foundation that is followed, and a formula, and a code. So what we're going to do is we're going to meet Bill, we're going to sit down, we're going to talk to him about where his experience has led him. Then I'm going to actually sit down with Bill and have him taste some of my food and determine whether or not it fits the bill. Did I meet the criteria of the quality bite? It's going to be so fun. I am excited about this journey. I love to be a constant student myself, so I always welcome someone with tons of knowledge, and I'm thrilled to be introducing you to Bill. Hi, Bill. Welcome.
Good morning. Hi, how are you?
We are thrilled to have you here. This is our episode that I'm calling Quality Bites. Now, one of the things I kind of already told the audience a little bit is that you are quite qualified. Because of your experience and your years in the culinary industry, I'd love you to talk to us about what your path has been and like how you work with chefs, and just give us a little insight into like where you've kind of gone with this whole process.
You know, I started out to be a minister. I had no intention of being a chef at all. But long story short, I got a job because I had nothing else to do in my aunt's restaurant.
Okay.
And I just fell in love with the whole thing. And it was my good fortune that the Culinary Institute of America moved into my neighborhood.
Oh, nice. So you're from New York?
I'm from New York.
Oh,
Hudson
great.
Valley, yeah.
Oh, great.
And
Beautiful area.
I didn't know that you could even go to culinary school, or that was an option.
Right.
You know, so I hooked in right away. I was working at a restaurant. I went to school full-time and worked at the restaurant full-time. And eventually, I graduated and came back and applied for a job there.
Okay.
You know, and one of the reasons I went back to apply for a job is that I had a degree in education.
You did? Okay. So the degree in education, and then restaurant just kind of falls in your lap, which is sometimes, this industry has a tendency to sort of suck you in. You're like, oh, and you just start doing it and you love it. And then to get educated in it, and then you go back to your institute of graduation and...
Because I had the education degree.
Great.
And all the chefs that were there, or the majority of them, were from Europe. They didn't necessarily have any formal education. They were all apprentices and so on.
Oh, okay.
And as good as they were as chefs, most of them were not very good at evaluating a student.
Okay, well, let's touch upon that. Okay, so take us kind of down that path. Where did it develop from there?
Well, I felt I could add something.
Right.
You know, because it's not enough for a chef to say, that sucks. You know, anybody.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I mean, a lot of times you see, and it's like, well, what makes it suck? Okay, if it's not good, why not? And why are you qualified? So, okay, so the education background allowed you to verbalize it and articulate it a little bit more?
Well, at
and
least
work
you
with
were
them?
introduced to the idea of how do you evaluate somebody.
Great.
That was the most important thing. That when anytime anybody makes anything,
Yeah.
they own it.
Yeah.
You know, so you got to be careful that you're not criticizing them personally. And if they own it, you're saying something bad about it, they're going to defend it. And most of us don't want to be criticized.
Right.
And we almost all have an automatic defense mechanism of it.
Well, I think also like a lot of what I touch upon in this show is because when you're dealing with any kind of artist, there's a level of vulnerability when you put yourself out there. And it's no different with creating food. It could be a canvas, it could be food, it could be dance, it could be anything that you're expressing your true inner self and putting your efforts fully into. So that's wonderful to recognize with food, because I think people sometimes they go to a level of, I'm the consumer, I'm right or wrong, and they don't respect the fact that there is a lot of energy of the creator. So
Sure,
that's
and
great.
Anybody who has a business, especially a restaurant,
Yeah.
knows with social media, any and everybody out there is a critic, and they
Yes.
are all taken at the same level.
Yeah.
You know, look, we try to be as objective as possible when you're evaluating something. And when it comes to food, how many of us are objective? I mean, so much of what
Yeah.
we think about food comes from our past experiences.
That's so much what I believe. I think that there's past experiences, there's emotion, there's so many things that can go into whether or not it tastes good to somebody. I'll give you a prime example. I sit down in my job and I taste with clients at least once a week. I could taste the same item with different people and it will taste completely different to them, even though I know it's the exact same flavor profile. And a lot of that goes into, what does it trigger in you? What does it represent? What's it saying to you on many levels outside just the palate? So really important to remember, I think, that's
And you see that in those evaluations where
Yeah.
one person says, oh, the macaroni and cheese is just the worst they ever had. And the
Right.
next person says, it's the best macaroni and cheese ever.
Right.
And that's a good example, because when I was brought up, I mean, the young kid, the best part of macaroni and cheese was the crisp topping on it.
right. So if you get a soft one, you're like,
But
It's
with
missing
the
something.
advent of packaged macaroni
Yeah.
and cheese, most kids today don't ever see that crust on it. So
Right.
they expect it to be just creamy.
Right.
You know, so oftentimes people will say, well, give me the crust, or make sure I don't get any of that, you know. So
Exactly.
It's all based on what they
that's a
experience.
great example because it's so relatable. I'm going to be a judge later on in this episode. We're going to take the cameras to the Mac and Cheese Fest, in which case I've got to evaluate mac and cheese from so many different perspectives. And I'm excited to see what their criteria is, but one of the things is it has to represent what's being promised. Is that correct? Is that part of the evaluation?
And you learn this, if you're dealing with students every day, you learn very quickly that you want to get it away from the personal. So you have to set a standard. This is what we're not evaluating you.
Right.
We're evaluating the product, which really is you. Right? But this is what we're evaluating about the product. You know, we have to have a consistent standard. You know, we're looking for certain things. For example, the macaroni and cheese. Is creativity going to be part of the aspect?
Right, yes.
Maybe not. You know, so
Presentation, flavor, promised flavors. You know, what's the description? Is it all present? And then there's a number of other criteria that we'll cover.
Right, and so it's important that the person who's entering knows what that is. Is nutrition going to be part of that? Probably not.
Probably not with Mac and Cheese Fest, right.
Is the value cost? I mean, is it got ridiculously expensive ingredients?
Right.
No one's going to. So you got to know ahead of time what are the main criteria, and then that's what you're judging against, the criteria, not against that person's particular interpretation of what macaroni and cheese should be.
One of the things that I think that people out there, I think because food shows have become so prominent and they're invited into our homes, we see people creating things. I think one of the things when you take food and creating food outside the classroom or in a learning environment, oftentimes what you see is people who are chefs in these environments ignoring foundation. And I say that lightly, but there is a certain foundation to cooking that I think in all art, you start with a foundation and then you can get expressive from there. But there is, like, French cooking is a prime example. Like, there are foundational sauces and there are foundational things. And those are oftentimes, like, relevant when critiquing the quality of the work. Does it have the foundation? Does it build from there? Am I correct in that?
That's a good point. And most of culinary schools started out with European cooking as the base, as did my education. But then along comes Asian cooking, which is totally different. So whereas in the French cooking, long, slow cooking, developing flavor was very important. A lot of times in Asian things, if you put the ingredients in too long, they're lost.
Right, like the flash, the hot pan. I mean, almost the opposite.
Yes, almost.
You know what I mean? And plus the oils versus the butters. I mean, kind of dealing with a whole different range. So that's really important. What are you trying to accomplish? Right. You know, what level of food? And then enters fusion, of course, which kind of just throws us all. But
confusion.
Yeah. What you want to avoid is confusion. Yeah. And I kind of tell, you know, I work with that a lot because I'll deal with maybe families that there's different ethnic groups where we're trying to combine and represent both families. And sometimes I just kind of have to tell the client, you know what, let's not try and combine them. Let's just treat them separate and have them both represented. You know, past hors d'oeuvres, if you have 4, 2 from this genre or this, you know, ethnic group, 2 from that. Because there's certain flavor profiles that I believe just don't blend that well.
They conflict, sure.
Yeah, and it's going to be like conflicting on the palate. You're going to be like, I don't know where to go with this. And so listening to the palate is really important too. So how does that tie into your evaluation?
Well, one of the first things you're going to evaluate is going to be the taste of the food, right? And the taste really is nothing more than, is it salty, too salty? Is it sweet, too sweet? Is it the right balance of sour or bitter? And then umami comes along,
right?
You know, back in 1992 or something.
Yeah, but we still hold on to umami.
Another flavor that's thrown in there. So you got to look. You're balancing those sort of things.
Yeah.
Some things should be too sweet.
Right.
You know, some things shouldn't be sweet at all. So you have to kind of balance those tastes. And that's just a taste. When you start adding the aroma of the food and the texture of the food, that develops into what we call flavor.
Okay, so let me ask you this, because this is something that I'm really curious about. Let's say you're tasting 10 students' food, and they're all doing basically the similar dish, and you're tasting it. Doesn't your palate get kind of tired? Like, I mean, the palate gets exhausted sometimes by the salty or savory flavors, in which case automatically you're kind of craving a sweeter element. Just naturally, your body's like, okay, I've had it with this salt. I need something else. How do you avoid that coming into play? Like, why aren't the people who you taste first basically getting a benefit to your palate being?
You make a very good point. I mean, you're lucky if you only have 10. If you're going, you're probably going to evaluate.
I'm doing 50.
50,
yeah.
You know? And there's no question about it. The order in which you taste the food is going to have an effect on it.
Yeah.
So what I've often done when I've had judged many contests is to say, okay, we're going to start off and we're going to do our evaluation, and we're not going to talk about it. Each individual judge has their own system. I mean, we have a criteria we're using, but we're doing our own evaluation. But then we have to always save the opportunity to go back, because the first one you have nothing to compare it to.
Right, okay.
So it may have been, that's too salty, but compared to the others, they weren't too salty at all.
Yeah, okay. So you kind of make your notes, and then maybe go back and retry.
Yes.
Water in between.
Yeah.
Little bread.
Carbonated water, a lot of it in between.
Right, okay.
Or crackers or bread or whatever.
Yeah, kind of clear the whole palate, evaluate.
And try to not to eat too much. I mean, when you start off, the first one you taste,
you're like,
good.
I'm hungry.
I'll have another bite of that,
right.
you know? And then before you know it, you're full. And
you're like, I can't look at any more mac and cheese.
Exactly. And I've been in competitions where judges said, I just can't taste anymore.
Yeah, yeah, like the palate's kind of just exhausted. Yeah. I get it. So I'm super excited about that. Now, I really want to highlight, you have an amazing educational and work experience. So we kind of touched upon, you went back to the Culinary Institute. Now, walk us through your path with that, because you've been a wonderful influence in the culinary world. So kind of brag on yourself just a little bit. Talk us through your bio.
Well, to get into the Culinary Institute with not as much experience as most of the chefs had, more education perhaps, I took a job as an advanced cost control instructor.
Oh.
Which was probably a job nobody else wanted.
Yeah, okay.
In a culinary school, you want to be in the kitchen.
Right.
Of thing. But that's how I got my foot in the door, you know, and then eventually I got into the kitchen. And the Culinary Institute had a great system where they bring in their students every 3 weeks.
Oh, that's really good, yeah.
So there's a graduation. That means that when you teach a class, you get to teach it again 3 weeks later.
Oh, that's fun.
3 weeks later, 3 weeks later. So you really get honed in on that skill. And then there are so many classes to teach, and you change classes. So what an experience.
Kind of keeps you fresh.
Keeps you fresh, keeps you learning new things.
That's great.
And then, of course, I'm an ambitious person, so you don't always agree with the person who is your boss, so you want to be your boss.
Right.
So I just kept moving up until I became the vice president.
That's great ambition. I mean, anyone who kind of decides they want to be their own boss and then moves into vice president, that's...
And then when I realized I wasn't going to be the president,
I
decided to go someplace else where I could be more in charge. And fortunately, I was invited by the mayor to come. We had done a consulting job in the city.
Okay, City of Chicago. We're going to bring it back to Chicago, right?
The Washburn Culinary Institute has been around since 1946. And it had been taken over by the City Colleges of Chicago.
Right, okay.
It was not in very good shape. It had been neglected. So they wanted to do something with it, and they invited the CIA to do a evaluation. How does this compare to other schools in our area and so on? Long story short, I gave them the report, and 5 years later, the mayor called and said, "We've been sitting on this report. No one's doing anything. Would you come and do what you said?" And that was my opportunity.
Fabulous. Yeah. And you spent about 12 years doing
12
that.
12 years, yeah.
And what's the level of experience? Like, how do you evaluate and value the Washburn Institute now? Like, what is it considered? Like, what's its level?
Well, the thing that attracted me to the Washburn Culinary Institute is that they were going to build a new school, so you could start from scratch. And they were going to put it on the south side of Chicago, 63rd and Halsted, right in the heart of Inglewood.
Right.
And the idea was to hopefully bring that back. It has not done that yet, but it will eventually help revitalize that area. But the other important thing was that's an African American community. And African Americans were not at that time well represented in the culinary world.
Oh, what a gift.
That as an opportunity to give a world-class facility and education for people who perhaps have not had that opportunity.
And I also find that, like, any young person who has too much time on their hands can find themselves, sometimes doing things that they wouldn't normally do. You get yourself in trouble, or you are not doing anything that productive. And I think that cooking and culinary arts, when it's introduced, can be such a gift. And I've found that in my own kitchen, when I take people in, when they start young, they find this inner pride that just keeps them going. And it's just fabulous. So that is amazing work. What a wonderful contribution to our city. And we're so grateful. One of my favorite segments is to share my tips with you. And I really love these tips. These are some of my most delicious little bites that I would say most of your guests are going to really like. I eat with a lot of people, and these are things that people really relate to. Most palates welcome these. Plus, they're really easy to eat at a party. So the first one I'm going to start with is the goat cheese, fresh fig, and apple bourbon puree croustade. Now, let me describe this to you in a little bit more detail as I hold it up. First of all, you're going to see that the croustade is just like a crispy French bread. So just toast it in your oven. Spread your creamy goat cheese mixture. If you need to cream out your goat cheese a little bit, cut it with, honestly, like maybe a little cream and whip it. Or you can always mix it with a little creme fraiche to just kind of spread it, make it more spreadable and not so thick and dense. It's always a good tip. But then I puree my fig, and it has taken me a while to kind of evolve into that, because at first I was just slicing it, but the guests were like taking the whole thing at once, and it was awkward. And one of my biggest things is I don't like to wear food when I'm at a party, and I know nobody else does. So that's usually my number one, is I don't want to wear it. And this is a great solution. Then the apple bourbon puree is just either dolloped or like drizzled on there a little bit. It brings a brightness though, and then the bourbon, everybody loves just a little hint of bourbon in their apple because it kind of gives that like deeper richness. So this is a great one, and I'm going to bite it on camera because I really want you guys to see how well it holds together. Nothing dripping, nothing drizzling. I can still talk. If I'm at a party, I can hold my drink. In order to liven this one up, because there's not a lot of brightness in the ingredients in terms of color, go out and get yourself some fun trays. They're not always that expensive, and you can find them at different places. Things with color, and then garnish. And if you have flowers, great. If you have herbs in your garden, fantastic. Just make sure, number one rule, it's edible. Whatever's going on that plate is edible. So this is wonderful. I love this one. And I'm gonna show you my second favorite, which is smoked salmon. Now, I go to Ireland a lot, and smoked salmon is a huge thing in Ireland. And then I've realized that a lot of different cultures love smoked fish. Smoked salmon in particular. Lox and bagels is a great one. Anything. It's a flavor that really speaks to a lot of palates. So this is one that is usually really well received. But one of my pet peeves, especially when I'm socializing and not sitting at a table, is to smell like fish. So I don't want to smell like smoked salmon. This is a great vehicle. I have this smoked salmon on a crispy brioche round, so I just cut out the rounds. Then I did a little burnt butter creme fraiche, smeared it on the bread a little bit. Then I take my salmon, I tartare it. It's a smoked salmon tartare. So tartare is the chop on this. Chop it up with the capers into it. Mix it all in so the capers aren't rolling off on you. And then I pickle a little onion. Pickling onion, so easy. If you want a quick pickle, just put your onion in some red wine vinegar. If you want to reduce it down and add some flavor, maybe a little clove or something, warm the vinegar, put your onions in there, but you don't want to cook your onions too much. You want to take them off and let them steep the flavor in. Then caviar adds a richness and an elegance. Now, for me, caviar means fun at a party. I don't know why. It just brings a level of decadence. So I added black and red. You don't have to be that decadent. Whatever you can find is perfect. But this is a good bite. Now you get to see us actually taste, and you get to see Bill evaluate my food. So what we're starting off with, Bill, is this is a fresh fig and goat cheese croustade with a bourbon apple puree. So let's enjoy.
Okay, well, it sounds good off the bat.
I know.
Okay, let me start. Hey, there's a lot of balance of flavor in here, and you can definitely taste the sour, acidic goat cheese
Right.
against a very sweet apple bourbon sauce. But I think what's missing a little bit is the fig. I think the apple bourbon puree overpowers the fig a little bit. So I would like to have seen a slice of fig.
We started off that way, and let me kind of tell you, because we're in catering, one of the things that has to go into this is that it has to be able to be eaten and not worn at a party. And what we were finding is with the fresh fig, it was hard to bite through sometimes, so it would pull off in one big chunk. So we did start it this way, but I agree with you that I love a good fig punch.
Yeah, even diced fig.
Right, maybe a diced fig. That might be a good way to go. I love smoked salmon. This is an Irish smoked salmon tartare. It's got a brown butter creme fraiche. Then it's got a little pickled onion, and it sits upon a toasted brioche. Now I'm going to let you evaluate, and then I'm going to tell you why I like aspects of this, but let's taste.
Yeah, it makes it difficult when you say this is your favorite. It has all the right visual cues. And you see this soft, crisp, colored combination there. And one thing you don't usually get with cold food is an aroma.
Right.
That smoked salmon does have it, and it has the appropriate aroma, so you're already setting yourself up for
I like that.
it tasting good.
Right. Okay.
It's a mouthful, though.
Enjoy. I know.
There's some caper in there.
Little caper. We added a little caviar for pretty.
Okay. It's delicious in every way. As smoked salmon is, it's salty.
Yes.
Right? And there's not much, and you added caviar, which is also
Also salty.
So I think the one thing that's missing is something fresh. I mean, the onion had the potential for that, but there's so little of it there, it isn't really there. So like, that's why so often when you have bagels and lox, you have cucumber.
Right.
You know, so slice of cucumber on the bottom of that.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I think would cut some of the saltiness. But.
Yeah. One of the things that I really like about this is that one of the challenges I had in creating this is that when you're at a party and you are passing an hors d'oeuvre, and smoked salmon is a prime example, if your fingers touch that smoked salmon, you're smelling like smoked fish all night. And not for anything, but no bride or groom or any guest at a wedding usually wants to smell like smoked fish all night. So this is kind of where I think the vehicle of the brioche comes into play. And that's why I say it's one of my favorites, because it took me a while to kind of accomplish that. Like, what would work? Because oftentimes, like a brown bread or a pumpernickel, it gets too dry. So this is kind of my solution, but I love the idea of the caviar. That's super fresh.
The thing is, also, it's a lot on there.
Yes.
So I was almost forced to put the whole thing in my mouth.
Yeah.
Okay, now, that's fine if you love it, but if you don't like it, that's a
Now,
place
okay,
you
I'm
don't
going to
wanna
challenge you
be.
to take another one and take a half bite and see how it manages, because that's always a good criteria. Do you wear it?
Well, it keeps coming. It's possible, okay? But now you're definitely getting some of the salmon on your fingers. And,
Right.
You know, but my point being is that if someone didn't know what smoked salmon was and didn't
Mm-hmm.
like it, then it's one thing to deal with a small taste of it. It's another thing to deal with a whole bunch of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, for my next tips, now these are not going to be your one-biters. These are definitely two-biters. And you can see that I have definitely invited myself a plate here, because you're going to need it. This is what I call a lobster roll with crispy whitefish, kimchi, and a sriracha Japanese mayo. Now, I have used a skewer in here to hold it together, so I'm going to remove that first. But you're probably wondering what exactly is kimchi. Not everybody knows what it is. It's a Korean cabbage that's been pickled with some spicing, almost like a fermented pickling. So it's got definitely a level of flavor that many of our American palates aren't used to. But once you taste it and you smell it, you'll see how it works its way into flavors. And this is so delicious. This brings it and elevates it to a whole new level. There's like a tanginess and a spiciness. And then with that Japanese mayo, you get a little creaminess. It's a beautiful bite that really highlights the fish. And the lobster roll, I just saute the lobster rolls on either side. Now this again is Hawaiian bread that I've used in the past and showed you tips on. I slice it off the top so it holds that sandwich ingredient really well. You show your little crispy sides, it holds together, it compacts in your hands so you don't have a lot of drippy. It's so yummy. I am just really excited to take this bite. And notice, it even sets down well. And that's why I brought a plate, so that I could show you that at a party, this is a good one. This is a real good one, and your friends are going to be amazed at how fun this is. This is a beautiful whitefish po' boy, and we've added an element of kimchi and spicy sriracha Japanese mayo. So enjoy, but it is a little big, so I encourage you to take whatever. Yep, just do what you can handle.
You can definitely smell that kimchi. That packs a wallop. I think it's delicious. I mean, the textures are great. Fish is cooked perfectly.
Yeah.
Nice crisp outer coating. The hot, spicy kimchi is a good surprise.
Yeah, it's fun,
That's
isn't
a creative
it?
thing
Yeah.
to do. Make a little bit different. That's delicious.
Yeah, and I think this lobster roll, you know, so many people kind of think lobster roll has to just be done for like a lobster po' boy or something. These lobster rolls are fabulous for so many items because they hold together. as much as this is a big sandwich, it's a good bite.
This is my favorite so far.
Well, that's a compliment. Here we go. Once again, thanks for tasting with us.